It is fitting that our speaker for the college's first ever virtual commencement has a background in history. Dr. Kurt Kinbacher, who joined the Chadron State College faculty in August 2013 and teaches history and anthropology courses, is our commencement speaker. Dr. Kinbacher, a native of Lincoln, Nebraska, was attracted to CSC because of an innovative and modern curriculum adopted by the history professors and the annual Maury Sandoz conference hosted on campus. He is also a published author of numerous historical articles and a book about immigrant communities in Nebraska. He is presented at the Maury Sandoz Heritage Society's Fall Symposium, and he chairs the committee that secures the keynote speaker for the annual Pilster Great Plains Lecture Series and Fall Symposium at the Sandoz Society annual meeting. He has presented numerous times on campus, served on committees, including Faculty Senate and as a faculty advisor for Student Senate, a faculty academic advisor in the START office, and a judge for the Western District History Day. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. Kurt Kinbacher to address our graduates.
All right, welcome class of 2020. My name's Kurt Kinbacher. I'm a historian here at Chadron State College, and today is a day to honor you. Historically, you'd be sitting together shoulder to shoulder waiting to get one of these. The thing that you came to school to get in the first place, and you are minutes away from accepting your degree. And I want to tell you that this is really a pretty big deal. What would go on with your graduation down in Memorial Hall is you would be hooded by your advisor as a symbol of your accomplishment. And these academic hoods used to have function back in the Middle Ages. Today they just kind of hang off our shoulders, but people actually used to wear these things around. But they're a mark of what you've accomplished. And while this is going on, I really encourage you to think about all of that. For you undergraduates, you'd be sitting shoulder to shoulder over in Chicoine Hall. Both of you would have these huge crowds waiting to take your picture, shout at you as you walk across the stage and receive your diploma, and maybe hug the president of the college on the way out the door, get your picture taken, and then you're gonna get back and you're gonna turn the diploma, you're gonna open up, then you're gonna make sure that your name's spelled right, which is a very excellent thing for you to do because that can be repaired. But what you're probably not going to do, and I'm going to ask you to consider when all this is going down, is the words that happen underneath it that tell you that you are entitled to all the rights, privileges, and honors that go with the degree. It's a pretty big deal. Although today, you probably don't feel all that much different than you did yesterday, or you will tomorrow, at least intellectually, but you've been becoming this graduate, entitled to all these things for all the time that you've been here. So let that sink in, but don't think it's going to sink in fast. Give it about a decade. But what you've accomplished here, once again, is a pretty big deal. I just want to congratulate you. Graduate students, here is your graduate hood with the beautiful colors of Chadron State College, the cardinal and the white to remind you of where you got this very important start in your life. Now this is a generic hood. If there's also a rand of color often on hoods, and at one time these actually were worn, but now they're over your head back in the Middle Ages. But now at the moment they're simply decorative to remind you of your accomplishments. So those of you in education, you would have a light blue. Those of you in business would have a light brown. And had there been a ceremony, your advisor and you would be standing shoulder to shoulder, and they would hood you and take a moment. This is really an important event in your life. You've really earned this distinction. And if you're playing along at home, I'm about 6'1", so if you're tall, please bend your knees just a little bit. Okay. So congratulations, Maury. You made it. For undergraduates, this tassel thing doesn't really have much of a medieval history. There's some debate where it comes from, but this is still a mark of completion. And what Dr. Ryan would ask you to do, were we all together in Chicoine Arena, was to take this tassel and move it from the right side of your very non-functional mortarboard hat over to the left side. So when you're doing that, if you're playing along at home, give yourself some pause, give yourself some reflection. This is something you've earned. This is something that no one can take away from you because you've now completed your degree and you're entitled to all these wonderful things. So off it goes. Congratulations, graduates. Class of 2020, go out there and do great things. Come back and let us know how life is going for you. Now, before you actually get to walk across the stage and get your diploma as your commencement speaker, and had this been a normal time, it would have been someone probably much more famous than me up here, a famous alumni, a governor, a judge, and yet here we are. So I know you want your diplomas, but first things first, you get to hear some unsolicited advice from your commencement speaker, and I have 5 things I would like to advise you on today. Because I'm a historian, I'm going to cite my sources. Number 1, I advise you never to get involved in a land war in Asia. And this advice is coming from Vizzini, the Sicilian pirate on Princess Bride. He gave this piece of advice and then died in a battle of wits, but that's not really the point. It is good advice. Really, the closest thing to success was in the 13th and 14th centuries when the Mongols built an empire that ran from Korea to Kiev, but even then the success was limited. Genghis Khan himself died in battle. His grandsons and sons expanded the empire, but the empire didn't even last as long as Nebraska has been a state. Now, there are some upsides to all of this conquest. Maybe, and just maybe, it might be myth, Marco Polo brought spaghetti to Italy. There's also a downside. The connection of this giant landmass led to bubonic plague that swept over the entire Eurasian continent. Now, we'll come back to the plague in a moment. Unsolicited piece of advice number 2, and this is coming from me. Every once in a while, watch Princess Bride. It'll make you feel better. I know we're all a little bit stressed and you need to find some outlets. And plus, it's Andre the Giant's greatest role. I advise you, number 3, in the words of Carol Levin, be generous. Dr. Levin was a senior professor when I was finishing my doctorate, and I was taking this class called Preparing to be Future Faculty, and really it served me well. And it doesn't mean as an educator, and many of you are educators that just give out A's. That's not really doing anyone any favors, but just think of the situation we're in. Sometimes people just need a leg up, and being generous costs very little, and the rewards can be really great. And it's beyond education. I mean, many of you are stepping out into the management world with your MBAs and your other degrees that get you in those positions. You, maybe someone who's chemically dependent today, 3 months from now will be your best employee ever. So it's good advice. I thank Dr. Levin for it, and I hope you're able to take that to heart in whatever that manifests in your particular line of work. Number 4. I advise you, in the words of John F. Kennedy, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. Now, this seems kind of grandiose, but you can scale this according to wherever you are in your life right now. It could be, what can you do for your family, for your ranch, for your business, for your community, for your planet? Because we're under a time of really unusual stress. I don't think any of us have experienced anything quite like this, although we certainly have recovered from stressors in the past, but this COVID-19 is fundamentally unfair. Now, there's going to be a silver lining to this, but I don't want to mitigate what people are going through right now. Americans are dying, while people around the world are dying. People are losing their jobs. And this isn't fair, but there's a lot of not fairness that's going on. Back in the 13th and 14th century, when the plague swept across China in 1320 to India in the 1330s to Arabia in the 1340s and then on to Europe, that wasn't fair either. A third to a half of the population died. They found scapegoats. They blamed Jews, which wasn't fair. But they didn't understand how disease vectors works, and clearly they didn't understand Judaism either, but that's also not the point. There's scapegoating going on at the moment. In places in America, nurses are being blamed for bringing the virus into the communities, and that's not fair either. And we should understand how viruses work. But there will be silver linings. You think back to the plague years that swept through Eurasia, shortly after the plague. Now, people's lives were devastated. I don't want to make light of that, but shortly thereafter, the Ming Dynasty, one of the greatest, emerged. In India, the Mughals built the Taj Mahal. The Ottoman Empire was founded in the Middle East and created peace and prosperity for 600 years. And from the Enlightenment, the United States. And I quoted John Kennedy. He was president at a very difficult time in American history, too. And I'm not suggesting that Americans need to unite politically, because we know that's not going to happen. And that's really never been the point of America, but when there is unity needed, America rises. Kennedy is not the only president who faced the Cold War that promised that we'd incinerate ourselves, competing with the Soviet Union. Truman did it, Eisenhower did it, John Kennedy did it, Johnson did it, Nixon, and then Ford, and then Carter and Reagan, and finally George Herbert Walker Bush. But we were all able to unite to, I guess, win. And what I'm hoping, and I'm hoping in another great American, Langston Hughes, who was a poet, he wrote, "Let America be America again. Let it be the dream that it used to be." My hope is that we're able to, once this blows through, we have work to do. We need to rebuild a lot of things. We need to get back on our feet. We need to move forward in unity and get to where we need to be. America and Americans lead. We lead the world. Americans believe in truth. We believe in science. We believe in stable institutions. We're coming through a hard time. We'll get to the end of it. With unity, we can make it better. It's a big hope. It's a big piece of advice. I think we can do it. We've done it in the past. We can roll up our sleeves. We can recover from this. And finally, piece of advice number 5 comes from Warren Zevon. He was a quirky American singer-songwriter. If you've ever heard the song Werewolves of London, that's him, the song of bad dogs all over the United States. He publicly fought a battle against cancer, and his piece of advice was, enjoy every sandwich. So I'll leave you with that. This is a big deal. Congratulations again. Come back to campus when we can all gather together and we can go through this all together in a more formal situation.